Today, I'm going to be dispelling some myths around soulmates and how you find them. And I'll share a story of a past life I had here with one of my soulmates, the lessons I learned, and how you can use this information to help find and connect with your soulmates. Are you ready?
I love you. You complete me. And I just had...
Shut up. Just shut up. You had me at hello. You had me at hello.
The woman in me so loves this scene, but the evolved soul in me wants to laugh at it because it's just not true. While we can love and love deeply, we are never meant to lose ourselves in another person. You complete you. And I want to share with you how it is that I know unequivocally this is true. Because for me, it's actually been one of my soul lessons. Back in 2008, I ended my relationship with Mark Abrahamian, who was my greatest love and spiritual teacher. When the relationship ended, I never shed one tear over it because deep down inside, I didn't believe it was over. I just knew it was over for now. It felt more like we pressed the pause button and circumstances kept us from being together. But I knew that there would come a time in the future when those obstacles would erode, and I believed we would resume our relationship. The draw I felt to this man was unexplainable. There wasn't even a super strong physical attraction at first. It wasn't love at first sight for me, but it was a magnetic connection and one that I couldn't understand and I couldn't ignore or run from, despite the fact that I wasn't even available to begin a relationship. Around that time, I discovered Dr. Brian Weiss's book, Many Lifetimes, Many Masters, and Same Soul, Many Bodies. He used a technique called Past Life Regression, where he relaxes you into a deep trance-like state using hypnosis techniques so you can access your past lives. I did some research and found a woman named Dr. Susan Weishart who trained under him in my area. So I made an appointment, and this is what happened. I was actually really nervous about doing this, not for the reasons you're probably thinking. I wasn't scared about exposing any type of life. What I was actually worried about was that I would fall asleep in the session and waste all my money and not get a past life reading. So, leading up to the week before this session, I actually made sure that I got super amounts of sleep so that I was really awake for the session, enough to be just regress without falling asleep. Now, remember I said that this is kind of like a almost like a hypnosis type state. So although you are under and you are super relaxed, you can still respond to questions. So I was wondering, was I going to make things up in my mind and tell a story to myself that wasn't true? That was actually one of my biggest concerns. So I had two very profound experiences uncovering past lives, and I'm going to share the first one with you. So what she did was she regressed me, and this process took a long time, like at least an hour, maybe even longer, to get me into this deep state. And then she had me picture myself walking across a bridge. And as soon as I stepped onto the land, she had me look down to see what I was wearing. And I could see that I was a woman. I had a female figure. I was wearing sandals and I was wearing a dress. And it appeared to be summertime where I was. It was like lots and lots of green rolling hills. And she instructed me to go to the place I lived. So I walked up to this place and it was a house built into a hill. Everything was green. And when I walked in, it was a single room inside this house. And I knew immediately I was living there with my parents and my daughter and my husband, except I knew that my husband and my father had left to go and fight a war. And it was some type of an area that was near the sea. And to me, the landscaping kind of looked like it might be Ireland. So, anyway, in this place, it's me, my mother, and my small daughter, who is probably about 2 years old. And then the men are gone. And then she had me go further into the later part of my life. And what I realized was that my husband, who left for war, never came back. And it wasn't because he got killed, it was because he made a decision not to come back to us. And of course, because she had instructed me to go to a significant lifetime, the husband in that life, I wasn't surprised. It was Mark in a completely different form. I was in a completely different form. And then she told me to go to the very end of my life. And at the end of my life, I was probably, I don't know, maybe in my 60s, and it seemed old for the time. And I realized that I had spent my entire life after my husband left sitting by the ocean, looking at the water, waiting for him to come back. And then she had me go to my deathbed. And in my deathbed scene, she asked me who was there, and it was my daughter holding my hand. And this is where my mind was blown. And I believe that I was really having a past life remembrance because, in my mind, when I think about reincarnation, I think about we take on these different roles. And I don't think that we necessarily play the same roles with the same people. So, in this lifetime, I would never, ever, ever have expected my current life daughter to be my daughter in that lifetime. And she was. So really felt like this was not me making up a story, because if I was making up a story, I wouldn't have cast her in that same role. I would have imagined it would be somebody completely different. So she held my hand and I died. And then I went to a life between lives. And what I learned from that lifetime was that I had given up my entire life for somebody else. I had squandered the lifetime. I had given up living. And all I did was sit there and wait for him to come back, because I felt in that lifetime the only value I had was as a wife and as a connection to him. And isn't it interesting? Then in this lifetime, I was presented with a very similar situation. He came into this lifetime and he didn't stay. He left. And I could have balled myself up and stopped living, but I knew that I had learned my lessons and that I was meant to have a very full life, whether he or anybody else was a part of it, because we do complete ourselves. And that's why I showed that clip, because it's really important that you understand that you can't live for somebody else. You can't live for your children. You can't live for your parents. You have to live your life for yourself, and you can't get lost in another relationship. So that was what I experienced. And it's really interesting because, like I said, I thought that the area I was in was Ireland, but it still didn't feel quite right. And in 2016, I took my daughter to Ireland and we drove 1,024 miles around the entire perimeter of the country. And I never did see anything close to the structure that I saw in my past life vision. So I knew that it wasn't Ireland. And now I have to share this really uncanny synchronicity that happened. Today, as I was creating the content for this video, I had the TV turned on and it wasn't tuned into anything. So there were these random photographs rotating. And when I looked up, the image that you see behind me was on the screen. And I had actually seen this image a couple times before, and every time it always elicited the same response in me. That's my house from that past life. That's my house. And the time frame was probably somewhere in the 1600s or the 1700s in that lifetime. I wasn't shown an exact date, but that's kind of the feel I got for it. And when I looked this up, I was able to do a little bit of research because a photographer was listed on the picture. And this house was actually in Iceland. And these houses were in existence from the year 1000 until the 1900s. And I also looked up wars, and there were several wars that would have matched the time frame of the 1500s and the 1600s. And it's really interesting that my entire life I have been obsessed with the Northern Lights. And 2 years ago, I even researched taking a trip to Iceland to try to see them. So to me, there were so many interconnections. And I think for you in lifetimes, you may have kind of a periphery awareness of certain things that you're drawn to. So, for example, have you been inexplicably drawn to a country or a city or even a race of people that's different than the race that you are right now in this human body? Have you ever visited a place before and felt like it was deja vu that you had actually been there before? When you were little, did you have something, an occupation that you felt drawn to that you wanted to be? I think often those are early clues. My son talked about being a pilot from the time he was 5 years old, and it never changed. And today he is a pilot in the Air Force living his dream. But perhaps he fought in World War II or Korea or even maybe Vietnam. In any case, I will include some resources for you to connect if this is an area that you're curious about and you want to learn more. In that session, I did experience two lives and a very brief life between lives review. And I'll be sharing my other experience in Module 7, Your Soul's Purpose. Why do we have a purpose? Uncovering it to empower yourself. You will not believe how closely that lifetime from the 1700s ties into my life today. I only hope this time I don't get killed doing it. So there is a really great movie that did a spectacular job of depicting the relationship we have with other souls in our many lifetimes called Cloud Atlas with Haley Berry and Tom Hanks. It shows how interconnected we are with our soulmates and the various roles that they play. And if someone was a villain in your past lifetime, when you encounter them in this lifetime, you may feel an apprehension towards them and not understand why. On a subconscious level, we always remember. So, how do you find your soulmates? Place an ad? Well, online dating is super popular right now, and I don't think that we need to actually look for our soulmates. Besides, when I say soulmates, I really hope now that you don't picture Jerry Maguire scene that I showed earlier anymore, because anyone of any significance in your life is a soulmate. How close they are on your super close soul team, or maybe a few branches away, may not be something that you can figure out. Remember how we've talked so much about energy? Well, since that's what you're made of, and you know now that you wrote your life contract, correct? Well, the energy for that contract and that connection will find you. We talked about the lessons that you came here to learn and that you would need to create and have the perfect circumstances to learn those lessons. And that includes the perfect people to learn them with. We are always both student and teacher. And when the timing is right, when both are ready for the lesson, you actually could not stop meeting that person if you tried. I'd like you to think of a person that you've met in your life in the last 10 years or so. It could be a close friend or a love, and you probably had a soul recognition with that person. Did it feel like you already knew them before you knew them? Maybe you had an ease with them that didn't even make sense. That's because you did. There is no one of any significance in your life who you have not known before and either experienced lifetimes here or perhaps in another realm, or even just got to know on the other side. There are probably trillions of souls, and we couldn't really know them all, but we meet and entangle, and each soul has a unique energy signature. If you think about it, if you've had like 100 lives on Earth, then what would you really look like on the other side? You would probably present yourself to another soul in a way that they could recognize you. So, for example, if your grandparent already died, when you go to the other side, you're probably not going to see them as how they would look in a different lifetime. You're going to see them as how they look to you as your grandparent, and maybe not the young version of themselves, but the version that you would be familiar with. So, I feel like we are an energy signature. Remember when I described my soul in module 3 and how I said I didn't have a form and that was really recognizable as a human? Well, that's what I mean. I've also heard countless people who have had NDEs say that when they left their body and they began to return to the other side, they'll often look back at the body they just left and feel absolutely no emotional connection to it, no draw at all. And I think this makes sense because if you played a character in a video game and you died, you wouldn't really have much attachment to that character because it wasn't really you. I am currently single, and people ask me all the time if I'm dating online, and I absolutely refuse to do it. Nothing wrong with people who decide to do it that way, but I know that when my next partner is ready for me and I'm ready for him, I won't have to look for him. I'll meet him at the top of a mountain or at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, which is actually where I met my twin flame. And I'm going to talk about that more in detail in Module 5 Soul Contracts Graduate with a Spiritual Degree. You don't have to look, but you can accelerate the timeline potentially. If you are ready for a romantic relationship, declare it to the universe. Ask your spirit team to help you find your best match or let that soulmate that you've contracted with come in. I've also heard mediums give messages from loved ones that they say they had a part in bringing a new love to you. So they can help us by getting our attention and sending us signs to help us recognize somebody. You need to do everything, though, you can first to work on yourself. Clear the energy. Get rid of relationships that don't serve you. Leave the news behind and all the negativity that goes along with it. Make a list as long as you'd like with very specific qualities that you would like to have in a partner. A really great time to do this is on your birthday or on a full moon or an eclipse or even on a solstice. Spring solstice in March on the 20th or 21st, summer solstice in June on the 20th or 21st, fall in September on the 20th or 21st, and winter solstice, which is probably the most powerful of them all, on the 20th or the 21st of December. So these dates can vary just a little bit, but they are very powerful dates. Write your intentions and say them out loud. It doesn't have to be focused on soulmate connections, but it actually could be focused on anything that you want to bring to you in your lifetime. You have the power.